Pittman had a birthday Sunday, so I'd like to wish him a happy birthday. They tell me you're old enough to know better now, so. The other item I have is a request for bill introductions. Anyone have any bills? Seeing none, we'll move on. We're going to open a hearing up and final action on Senate Bill 514, making and concerning certain supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 24 and 25 and appropriations for fiscal year 25 and 26 for various state agencies. We're going to start out with an overview with Dylan Deere, Legislative Research Department. Dylan?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name's Dylan Deere. I am the Assistant Director for Fiscal Affairs for the Legislative Research Department. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start us off with. So behind the chairman, there are several copies of our budget analysis. So we are finally printed and official. It has also been posted to our website as well. So if you need to get out there and find those old BAs, they are on the new and revised KLRD website, or if you have a question about an agency and you're in the room, we've got some copies of them back there. All right. So everybody should have a packet of items before them at this point. And my intention at this point is sort of just walk you through what it is you have in front of you. And if you want me to spend some additional time on a particular item or have some additional questions, I will be sure to turn that over to my staff, which will answer that question for you. So this is the overview, really quick. This is actually the first 4 pages of our budget analysis of Senate Bill 514. Stephen and Megan have done a lot of hard work getting this together, so I went ahead and just used this as the overview of the governor's recommendation. So what you can see here, and I'll mention a couple items in here that are not really in this bill, just to make that clear. So the governor recommended a revised 24 budget of $25.3 billion, including $9.9 billion from the SGF. That recommendation is an all funds increase of $794.4 million, or 3.2%, and an SGF increase of $163.6 million, or 1.6%. And then it goes through a series of bullets that you have been reviewing for the last 6 weeks. So you have the money in here for contract nursing. There's some K-12 finance in here. There's the credentials verification system is in here. There's some additional expenditures with the KDHE lab. There's the Board of Indigent Defense Services assigned counsel caseloads. There's also some revised human services caseloads that are part of this budget recommendation. In addition to that, on page 2, you have a couple of revenue adjustments. So you have the acceleration and the elimination of the sales tax on groceries and transferring $30 million to the SGF from the Wichita State University and the University of Kansas Medical Center to restore legislative intent on the Health Collaboration Project, which you have a similar but not identical policy in a different bill. I would note that this first item on sales tax on groceries is not in SB 514. So that would be in a tax bill that the governor would recommend, but it does impact the profiles, which I talk about when I talk to this committee, so I want you to be aware of it. In 25, the governor recommends a fiscal year 2025 budget of $26.5 billion, including $11.2 billion SGF. The recommendation is an all funds increase of $1.3 billion, or 4.9%, and an SGF increase of $1.3 billion, or 12.9%. And so there's money in here for funding of Medicaid, okay? There's actually a add of $30.9 million here of SGF, but there's also about $90 million worth of savings that are associated with Medicaid expansion for a net of savings of around $60 million. There's a bunch of debt service that's in here. I will note that this document describes the GovRec as it was received by this committee in SB 514. It has since been amended but through GBA number 1, which moved that debt service from fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2024. But you've taken action on those inside of the shorthand, which I'm about to show you here in a moment. There's also the new correctional facility at Hutchinson at 377.6. There's a statewide salary adjustment for state employees in here. You have fall human services caseloads. You have $75 million in here for the construction of a new cancer research facility. You have $40.2 million SGF to construct a new medical behavioral health and support building at Topeka Correctional Facility. There's $40 million in here in housing grants. There's $30 million in here on page 3 on construction and operation of child care programs. $15 million for child care sustainability and workforce grants. There's $20 million to support the World Cup Games, $4 million for bids, $5.2 million for your revised K-12 education consensus estimates. And there's some revenue adjustments. So on the bottom of page 3, you have the first 4 bullets, which are your Social Security income tax adjustments, your $90.5 million SGF to increase the standard deduction, your $6 million for the Kansas Child Care Tax Credit, and $84.5 million to extend the sales tax changes. Once again, not in SB 514. I just want you to be aware of it because it figures into your profile. And there's also the transfer of $35 million SGF to the State Water Plan Fund, the restoration of the transfer to the local ad valorem tax reduction fund, the transfer of $7.3 million SGF to the Star Bond Sales Tax Refund Fund, and the deletion of $20.6 million SGF and other various adjustments. Turning to the last page, just gives you a little bit of a visual representation of the governor's recommendation. And it's going to talk about things in terms of all funds and state general fund and our major categories of expenditure. On the very last page is something I'll probably come to once we're all done with this discussion, which is the profile. And this profile actually reflects Senate Ways and Means Committee action to date. So it does not reflect any actions taken today, but it sort of gives you an idea of where the committee would be without any tax adjustments, okay, at this point. So it sort of just gives you a kind of a starting point to start thinking about the budget from. Other documents that you do have in front of you are the pink documents. We refer to this as the Senate shorthand. These are all the adjustments that the committee has made from the governor's recommendation. So what I've been describing up until now has just been the governor's recommendation. If you just turn to page 2, you can see that the committee has deleted about $479 million worth of SGF from the governor's recommendation. And if you turn to page 8, I believe, you can see in fiscal year 2025, the committee has deleted about $500 million from the governor's recommendation. The majority of those reductions are in 2 areas. They're going to be the deletion of a lot of that bond, a lot of that debt service reductions for the $450 million for CAPERS, and also the Hutchinson Correctional Facility, Topeka Correctional Facility, which I don't believe the committee's position is not do them, but I think you're exploring some additional options about how to fund those projects. Rather than walking through this line by line, I will stand for questions at the end as far as committee action has been taken on that, but I want you to be aware of the documents you have. Now you have a light purple sheet. Looks like this. These are items for review prior to finalization of the budget. And so these are all the items that you sort of indicated that you wanted to talk about before you kicked it out of committee. What I'll note before I even start on these is that the overwhelming majority of these items are Kansas Board of Regents, okay? The recommendation from the Kansas Board of Regents was not to delete these items. Instead, the recommendation was to review them in omnibus. And we have a new column in this document this year. So if you look kind of in the middle where it says funded in Senate Bill 514, if it says funded here, that means that item is already in the bill, okay? So often what you did is you didn't delete it from the budget, but you said, let's go ahead and talk about this before we kick this out of committee. So we wanted to clearly indicate to the committee whether it's currently in the bill or not. There are also some not funded items, particularly within the Kansas Board of Regents, which were agency requested enhancements that were not part of the governor's recommendation. And so each one of those will indicate not funded next to its status. But you did want an opportunity to review all enhancements, not just those that were recommended by the governor. So I could like touch on the first one. It's like Kansas Board of Regents reviewed the addition of $110,000 SGF for the maintenance of effort for the adult education program. Okay, it's funded, it's in the bill. So they're just, you would have the opportunity just to leave it in the bill, or you would have the opportunity to delete it at this point going forward. The next document that I have for you is the dark purple sheet. And this is just for your informational purposes only. But these are items to be reviewed at omnibus. So these are things that you said, no, we're not going to review these now, but we might review these in a couple of months. All right? The next groups of documents you have before you are your special revenue fund tables. And these do show adjustments with SWAM committee adjustments year to date. All right? And I won't go through those individually, but there's not a whole lot of adjustments that you're going to see on those special revenue fund tables, but you do have a couple. So it's each one of these. So light purple is CIF table. Blue is the State Water Plan Fund table. Green is the EDIF table. And this very vibrant orange is the Expanded Lottery Act Revenue Funds table. And that's, again, just for your information purposes, and nothing I really need to go over on those items. It's just wanted you to be aware of what you had before you. And with that, I would take us back to the profile. So this is a standard 5-year profile. There are some assumptions that I want to. This document is prepared at the request and direction of Senator Billinger, the chair of the committee. Once again, I like to make the point, anytime we hand you a 5-year profile, this is a planning document only. Obviously, we could not anticipate if there's going to be some sort of recession or major uptick in the economy that's going to happen over the next 5 years. But we do want to provide this type of document to you to give you sort of an insight into what may or may not be coming. So if you look at FY 2025, or 24, we'll start with 24 approved, the ending balance is about $2.8 billion. You have a big line in here for reappropriations. That's $551.3 million. There's the deletion for human services caseloads, the deletion for school financing. The governor's budget amendment number 1 is that's where we figured out this item. And then all SWAM adjustments as of March 1st. And that leaves you with about $2.8 billion in the ending balance. You go to 25, you have to reverse out the reappropriations, otherwise they carry forward as expenditures in the budget. And then you have your various caseload adjustments, your GBA number 1, SWAM adjustments, again, about $500.4 million, as I mentioned previously, and again, about a $2.4 billion ending balance. On the next line in FY 2026, when you carry that reappropriations and one-time line over, when you have one-time expenditures in a budget, as are recommended by the governor, there's about $1.3 billion in recommended one-time expenditures. In the next year, you'll see a reversal of those expenditures so they aren't built into the base and they don't sort of carry forward. However, when this committee deletes those, we also have to remove those from the $1.3 billion in the out year. So that number has been dropped down to about $352.1 million. Then you have human services caseloads and school finance. And then you have the reverse out of the $74.9 million. And then you have an ending balance of $2.5 billion. And that $2.5 billion carries forward to 27 and then increases a little bit to 2.6. When reviewing these profiles, I actually think it's really easy, really valuable to look at the bottom line, which is in FY26, you have the $86.3 million. That's the receipts above or below expenditures, and 49.2 and 126.6. That means that underneath the current profile, your expenditures continue to be less in the out years than your revenues, which is sort of this idea of structural balance is what you're looking for there. So if you're looking at a profile and just determine, ask yourself, is this a structurally balanced profile? Looking at that bottom line number is a good place to start, rather than the ending balance, which can of course fluctuate up and down over time. With that, I would sort of stand for questions. I know there will be some. So.
Thank you, Dylan. Questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Dylan, back to just the point you were making. So if I look at FY 2025 and I go to the receipts, I go to the bottom line, bottom number. So that's saying that by this estimate in '25, we're 403 million below '24?
That's correct. And that's really related to those one-time expenditures. So if you have, like one-time expenditures of $1.3 billion, even having them reduced by the large amount that's been deleted by this committee, it still does create that structural imbalance. It does draw down that ending balance that's in there.
Just to follow up, so then if I go on to 26, where we're showing then 86 million above 25, is that correct?
That's correct.
But we have a stronger ending balance of 2.4, or almost $2.5 billion.
That's correct. And if you look at the consensus revenue estimating line, okay, you're going from 9.8 billion to 10.2 billion. So that's what's making up that. So it's revenue growth that's making up that difference that you're identifying there. But good catch.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Pittman.
Thank you. And thank you, Dylan. What's the difference is the bolded out in the out years just because those are estimates? Is that why it's bolded?
That's correct.
Okay.
Other questions?
One more.
Senator Pittman.
Percent revenue change from previous fiscal year. Why does that bounce 1114, negative 9.7, 2.2? Is that a function of the consensus revenue group?
So you're talking about percent expenditure change from previous year, and you're going.
I'm sorry, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th line down. In the very middle, it goes 11% revenue change.
Correct.
Well, it seems like it's varying as we get out into the out years. I mean, what's that function there? It doesn't make any sense that it goes 14% down to negative 9 to 0.7 to 2.2.
So what you're seeing going from 23 to 24 is revenue growth. Okay, so because you're going from 9.8 to 10.3 billion dollars, and that's natural revenue growth inside of the economy that we're mostly seeing there. And then you see some reductions as some of the new sort of the tax plans are implemented. Okay, so the food sales tax, and as that's fully implemented, as food sales tax becomes fully implemented, then natural revenue growth starts to take over again. So you have this drawdown as the sort of tax provisions are implemented, and then you have a restoration of an equilibrium around that point.
And that's the 2 points. That's roughly about 2 to 3% is what they're estimating.
That's what you're estimating.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Darlin.
You're welcome. Like I said, our staff is available, so anytime you want some additional clarification, feel free to call us on up.
Okay, committee, the lavender sheet, I guess I would call it, items for review prior to finalization of Senate Bill 514. It's on the top of the sheet. I think we'll start out with this sheet, and the bulk of this is the Kansas region. So if everyone would go ahead and briefly look over the sheet on the Board of Regents. Basically, it'll tell you the ones that were funded, the ones that were partially funded, and the ones that the governor did not fund. And so if there's any particular questions on any of the items on the Kansas Board of Regents, we'll just start there because that's the bulk of this, and then we'll finish up. Senator McGinn.
Thank you. I need to be educated here. On that first item, I was just curious, it's maintenance of effort for adult education programs. So is this something like, I'm a senior and I want to go take a class at one of the regions? If that is it, why do they have a maintenance of effort? I don't understand that.
This is like centers where they get their GEDs and so forth, and this is our match to the federal funds.
Thank you.
Just give everyone time to look these over, and then if you have questions, we'll just address them as we go here. Give you a little time to look over. Senator McGinn.
On item number 15, is this a previous program that we've had? Or is this a request to build on a program we already have?
We're just going to have them go to the podium, and then they can just answer the questions as we come up with them. Brianna, if you want to. Thank you, Brianna. The question was on item number 15. The Rural Kansas Initiative supports students in rural communities from high school into college for the first 2 years.
Can we clarify, what was the question? Is it a new program or?
Senator McGinn.
The question is this a new program or is this an addition, money in addition to a program that is already exists?
Give me just a second. I believe this is a new program.
And the governor did not recommend this one.
Correct.
That's why it says it's not funded.
Correct.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then I'll just go on to 16, that it's a small fiscal item, but it's to reimburse financial aid staff for expenditures to participate in the FAFSA completion events around the state. Those events are already going on, but can you expand on how that funding was going to be used?
Yes, give me just a second to flip. So according to the Board of Regents, the federal financial aid helps make post-secondary education more affordable for students each year, but eligible students do not always apply for it. The oversight results in unclaimed Pell Grants and may limit students' consideration of post-secondary pathways available to them. The class of 2022 from Kansas left $35.8 million in federal Pell Grants, according to the National College for Attainment. The class of 2021 did not claim $35.1 million. So this is just to help with those events and get those staff reimbursed, from what I understand. If I answered your question, I'm sorry if I didn't.
And so this is a new program again, and the governor did not fund this, correct?
Correct.
Senator Petty.
So, but actually, the FAFSA events are not a new program. What's the funding is for the Board of Regents to provide staff to be at the FAFSA events, correct?
Correct. So the events themselves are not new, just the funding for this is new.
For Board of Regents staff to be present at that. So the events those have been going on. It's just, this is looking at another way to increase student participation and their ability to apply for those, for the FAFSA fund. So we can potentially maybe get our students could have 35 million more federal funds to help with their education.
Correct. This is just to help make those sure there's people staffing those events, and so the students can get through the process of financial aid. Correct.
A good use of $20,000.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
So is the item number 21, is that for a different year than item? Didn't we already have this? Isn't that in there earlier?
Brianna?
Right, so there's a supplemental request for 110 in fiscal year '24, and then there's also a request in fiscal year '25.
So 24 is funded, but 25 is partially funded, it says?
Yes, so 2024 is funded by the governor, and then 2025, the request was for 1.1, and from, the governor only recommended 110.
Wasn't it 110 in 24?
The request was for 110 in '24, and then this year, their request was, it's not on here, was 1.1, so 1,110,000, and the governor only recommended 110.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Senator Pittman?
I guess this sheet doesn't necessarily reflect maybe that 35 million that we're talking about putting as a condition, a DEI condition. Is that right? This sheet doesn't seem to have the 35 million that we cut from the Board of Regents funding, subject to them certifying that they're not going to have any mention.
Senator, it's on the pink sheet.
It's not on the purple sheet?
Right.
We're only doing this one?
No, it's on the pink sheet.
Oh, it is on the pink sheet.
On the pink sheet.
Are we allowed to talk about it? We can still, we can wait till, I just wanted to add some questions about that particular line item, but I can wait.
I mean, if you got a question on the pink sheet, that'd be fine.
All right. Well, I was just wondering if, the language in that, I didn't know if anybody had identified any, from your perspective, any other funds that would be at risk. I'm really worried about federal funding and grants and research projects that might impact. And I didn't know if anybody, if you'd looked at that at all inside of that particular provision that would restrict the universities from having anything to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Brianna?
Chairman, I have not looked into that further. I haven't been asked to, and I haven't heard any other responses from the universities pertaining to this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Other questions? President Masterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for process, I assume what we're doing here is we're looking through this particular sheet, these items, and that without objection, they'll be considered reviewed and approved.
Correct.
Thank you.
Has everyone had an opportunity to get over the whole list on the regions? Are there any other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, number 18, I was just questioning when they look at utilities and other contracted services, do they have a breakdown? How did they decide on 7 million? How do we know that isn't 5 million or 10 million? Is there a breakdown of how they come up with that number?
I don't have a breakdown of how they come up with the number. They talk to the universities, and the universities put this request in their unified budget. So the Kansas Board of Regents speaks with universities on these things. I can provide a breakdown of how that funding would be distributed, but I don't have a necessarily like formula as to how they decide on what needs to be added for this.
Okay, so I would be interested like in the utilities versus the contracted services. Is there any existing where they went up, or we got new contracted services? Just trying to understand how that number was arrived. Thank you.
Brianna, is this a number that is in the budget last year and the prior years, or is this something new?
Last year, there was, it's not labeled the same thing, but there was an inflation utilities cost request last year as well.
Thank you. Any other questions on higher ed? Thank you, Brianna. We'll go back to the front of the sheet, and there's just a few items, other items that we wanted to touch on. Let's go through the first 5 items there. Item 1 is the Kansas Board of Regents, 110,000 was funded for adult education program. State Library, that was partially funded. The judicial branch was partial deletion on the enhancement request, and Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we have staff give us a refresher on the judicial branch items that were not funded?
Yes. Be just a minute here.
If you want to move on to the next items and we could just return to that one,
Okay.
I appreciate it.
We'll come back to that one when he gets the information. Department of Commerce. Okay, Department of Commerce, review for additional 200,000 EDF for public broadcast and funding. I'll refer to Senator McGinn on that one.
Okay, I plan to address that. On number 2 though, how much did they ultimately get? Did they take out the 2.5 for libraries? I'm trying, That's the governor's. Okay. So.
Right, it was partially funded.
Oh, so that was her. Okay, thank you.
Well, the committee partially funded, or the governor's recommendation.
Which was her recommendation?
Right, yeah, she had a recommendation, and the committee had went through it and had made adjustments.
I just needed to understand the number. For you guys. Pass that around. Back to number 4, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready.
Yes.
Okay, I'm passing out to show you the dismal amount of money that we provide for public broadcasting. You know, this is a service that you don't have to subscribe to a cable company or anything like that. And I just want everybody to see what the other states in our region are providing to their public broadcasting, and look at the history of what happened to ours from 2010. And then in 16, they started receiving the 500,000, and they haven't received an increase. And that's why I proposed to increase it by $200,000, which I still don't think is, maybe enough, but could help. But, they do a lot of fundraising on their own to keep those programs alive. If you want to see the different programs or the different locations across the state, I can give you that as well, but it looks to me like it's approximately 10 across the state. And anyway, these do have good educational programs on there. Even has Ask Your Legislator, if you've ever been on there, so that people back home can find out what's going on here at the Capitol. So I believe, because the poor funding that they have received in the last almost decade, that they should get at least something, because we've been talking about inflationary problems and everything else. So.
Was that a motion? We have a second?
If I got a second, it's a motion.
Question, Senator Clays.
Yeah, not a question. Just last time we discussed this, we had a handout on the Economic Development Initiatives Fund, and it showed approximately $8,000 balance. That has since been updated, so there wouldn't be a necessary adjustment on the SGF. So I just wanted To clarify that from our previous, there is a, if you look at your green sheet, a $726,000 ending balance that it could come from.
And the motion was for the 200,000, correct? Okay. And so we'll have that come from the EDF for just additional 200,000. Okay. Everyone okay with that question, Senator Petty?
I just want to be clear, so we're talking about funding at 700,000 as opposed to nothing.
No, they already
No.
get 500.
They get 500, and we're increasing it to 700,
700,000.
additional 200,000.
Make sure, 700,000.
Everything's always 1 year, yep. Any other questions? See, Senator Pittman.
Just curious, because I'm relatively new to the committee compared to you guys. This EDIF fund, we're not taking money away from anybody else by putting 200,000 in, right? The pie is big enough to afford.
The ending balance was 726,620, so it would be less 200,000.
We'd be down at 500.
Correct.
And everybody else inside of this, that's the breakdown on the back, would still get their portion of that pie. Okay, thanks.
Did you say
Other-
you had a birthday?
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Yes, GR. Okay, the next item we had on the sheet was the Department of Education. Review the deletion of 119.18 million, excuse me, 119.8 million, including 213.2 million SGF. Remove all enhancement requests for fiscal year 25 with the exception of fall 2023 educational consensus estimates and the incentives for specialty care. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to move this to omnibus review. There's some complexities to the finance scheme that's involved in this that involves a tax plan that hasn't passed. So I'd just like to give us a little more time, take a look at how this is financed and review it omnibus.
Okay, we have a motion, a second by President Masterson. Questions? Senator Pittman. Senator Petty.
So I would appreciate if staff would provide information about everything that is being deleted with this funding change, because this also includes, well, I would like them to do that, so we didn't be clear.
This was not funded. The governor did not fund this, so.
No, that's not correct. We did not fund this.
Correct, we deleted it. Any other questions? Senator Pittman.
Yeah, I mean, I am concerned. And this includes child care credit, I think, doesn't it? The Children's Action. There's a lot of different items that were cut from a broad stroke. I appreciate looking at this and reviewing it in detail. I just want to make sure that we will have an omnibus. We got to be assured that we're going to have an omnibus bill before I really feel comfortable that we are going to move forward with reviewing this at omnibus. If it happens this year we don't, then this falls by the wayside, and it does concern me.
I believe we are having an omnibus. Does anyone know anything different? Senate President is shaking his head yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The plan at this time is to have an omnibus, and I fully anticipate that to happen.
Senator Petty.
So, Mr. Chairman, can we have staff clarify everything that's in here? Because just as,
We can, if that's
I
a
appreciate
request.
that.
Yep.
Good morning.
Please state your name.
Jennifer Light, KLRD. I'm the fiscal analyst for the K-12 budget. So as part of the deletion, what was removed were the enhancements that were SGF enhancements. This includes the additional special education services state aid, which is the additional $74.9 million over the next 5 years. This includes an additional $3 million for the mental health intervention team pilot program. It includes an additional $1.9 million for professional development state aid. It includes an additional $1 million for mentor teacher program. It includes an additional $517,000 for career and technical education transportation. Oh, my apologies, that is not there. The governor did not recommend that. That is not part of what we're discussing. And it includes the state foundation aid, the increase for the 20 mil exception, which is the tax plan discussion that we were having. That would be replacing $93.4 million from the school district finance fund with SGF due to the tax plan. It also includes 30 million SGF for a child care accelerator grant, and then 5 million for a public-private partnership for the children's cabinet for the Dane G. Hansen Foundation's partnership. So those are the items that are listed in here as part of the deletion. For the special education services state aid, I would state that the consensus numbers are still there, so there is still special education funding. It just would not include the addition. The same is true for the mental health intervention team, the professional development, mentor teacher program, and the state foundation aid would remain as it is currently through the school district finance formula. So the only ones that are new items that would not have any money in the budget right now would be the 30 million for the child care accelerator grant and the 5 million for the public-private partnership. Does that answer your questions?
Other questions, Senator Petty?
Thank you. And so the 30 million for the child care accelerator grants, that's one-time money, that's in CIF, is that correct?
It is one-time money that's SGF. It is not CIF money. All of these are SGF money.
Thank you. So it's one-time money for $30 million for child care expansion across the state.
That's correct. It's to be used for the construction and operation of child care providers to increase capacity for child care across the state.
Thank you. And then the public-private partnership, the $5 million, that $5 million is to match already private dollars that are there, as you mentioned, through the Hansen Foundation, and that's for a specific part of our state.
It is to do a match, and that's to cover the 26 county footprint, which is mostly in rural counties.
Correct. Then you mentioned the other programs that are included in this. They're there already, they're current programs, but for example, with the mental health pilot program, that funding that was there was to expand to, it's now, could you remind us again how many school districts is now in and how much would go to?
Sure, there is currently 90 school districts in the program, and they anticipate that the additional $3 million would increase it between 15 to 25 school districts, depending on the size of the school district.
And the school districts also have to provide funding within that model as well.
That is correct.
It's not all state fund. Yeah, to me, I'm cautious about us putting off to omnibus. But when it comes to particularly and thank you, for the child care accelerator grants, we have heard repeatedly about the need for expansion of child care across our state, and this is one-time money that would help with the construction expansion in communities throughout Kansas, particularly our rural communities. And the $5 million is with the private dollars that are already there available. and for those 26 rural counties seems to be a great investment of money, and I would hate to see us ignore these opportunities that are there and the investment that these communities are wanting to make with the help, with the support of the state. The mental health pilot program has been very well received throughout our state, but the point of the additional $3 million is to be able to expand the number of school districts that can actually have that resource within their schools, within their school districts. We've talked constantly about the mental health issues, and so not providing this funding just shows that we really are ignoring an issue that we say we're very interested in. I would encourage our committee to put this funding back in and not put it off to omnibus. I would even suggest we might divide the question and we could take out certain things.
Other questions? President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the breakdown, and I think the two largest items increase the wisdom of putting off to omnibus. You have the $93 million that contemplates a tax bill that hasn't been passed. Then you have the $75 million in special ed that's being contemplated in Education Committee, tied to other policies. So it doesn't make any sense for us to include this at this time when you have just complete unknowns on the larger ticket items. And I would add, I think these are all enhancements on top of the statutory increase that is going to K-12 on top of that. So it's just, at this point in time, it makes sense to move it to omnibus.
Senator McGinn.
Thank you. I just have a question, and it may be for Senator Petty on this. When the chair of the Education Committee presented to our committee about the removal of the $74 million for special education services, I believe she talked about how the formula isn't equitable. And I think I followed up with the fact that I hope you get started working the following week to work on the equity of the special education money. And I would just like to have an update to find out whether the Education Committee has started working on that. And because here we are 3 or 4 weeks later. So my question is for Senator Petty because she's on education.
Senator Petty.
So thank you for that question. So the Education Committee did have a presentation the end of last week from the State Department of Education on special ed funding and how it is actually what the formula looks like and how it goes out to districts. I think there is I know that there has been a misconception perpetrated that some districts are receiving more than 100% of their funding, and it was clarified by the State Department that that is not correct, that districts only receive funding for the services that they provide. And the confusion, I think, comes about because we do have cooperatives and we do have interlocals and we do have school districts that some school districts provide their own special ed services, some school districts are part of interlocals, and some school districts are part of cooperatives. So that information was spelled out very precisely to the committee, but as far as to the Education Committee, but as far as any work that's gone on at this point, that has not occurred.
Senator McGinn.
If the documents aren't lengthy, I'd kind of like to see the one sheet, and I don't know if you could have your staff request that and just send it via email like you've done on some of the other requests. I'd just like to see it because I'm not on the committee. Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
So I appreciate that the President of the Senate mentioned those two larger items that are included within this budget, but that would even more emphasize the fact that there seems to be no reason why the Child Care Accelerator Grant and the public-private partnership, which both deal with childcare should not be funded currently and not carried off to omnibus. So I'm going to make a motion to divide this question.
We have a motion and a second. President Masterson.
I think the proper would be a substitute motion in the prescription of the Senator from Wyandotte, not a division of the question in committee.
Okay, I will, thank you for,
Senator Petty.
thank you for that assistance. I'll make a substitute motion that we do fund, that we include the funding for the child care accelerator grants, 30 million, and the public-private partnership, 5 million in our budget recommendations.
So we have a motion, a second by Senator Pittman. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. Okay, division. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion fails. 4-3. Nancy, they'd like to be recorded, please. President Masterson.
Mr. Chairman, I believe from a process perspective, the failure of the substitute motion, we're on now the underlying motion from Senator Clays.
Yes. Any other questions? Seeing none? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. You want to be recorded? Okay. Senator Petty'd like to be recorded, not Senator Pittman. Okay, next on the list, we'll go to Department of Health and Environment, and I will refer to Senator McGinn again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe when we deliberated and then reported back to this committee, there was a great deal of confusion. The way it was written up, it looked to us, or at least to the chair, that this was really Ascension via Christie. And since I am from the Wichita area, I know the work they do for mental health and that type of thing. And so I took it as it was their request only to find out that it is Advent Health, University, Kansas Healthcare System, Ascension, and Salina. And we did receive testimony from Ascension, Via Christi, and Advent. So there was just a lack of understanding that this was a joint effort. They requested 15 million, and knowing now that it's more than just Via Christi, Wichita, I would like to ask the committee if, since it's more, that that we would take that 8 million that we set in committee to 10 million, still less than what they requested. And it's one-time expenditures to support hospitals providing inpatient behavioral health services for 25.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Got a second by Senator Clays. Questions? President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification for myself. So the language, there's still language in of how it splits. Is it prescriptive in how it divides up?
Reagan's here. Yeah, you are here.
Senator McGinn.
I think it was, and maybe Senator Petty knows, but I think it was just this group effort to help fund some of those beds, and I cannot find their distribution on method of that. So I will have to defer to see if Senator Petty knows.
I think Senator Petty said that they've worked it out on the distribution between all the. Senator Petty.
It's their behavioral health beds. It's the beds that they provide for those that can't be in, get into Osawatomie or Larned. And so they have the distribution determined by the number of beds that they have at each facility. Like Advent Health, I think, has 46 beds at their facility, and the amount of time that they're filled. So they have that agreement among those hospitals that have those behavioral health beds.
Senator McGinn.
And it was so noted to us later that they did work together, and that's why they were supportive of each other. So my error when I focused on Wichita, there were a few hospitals in the gallery here that weren't very happy, to say the least.
Any other questions? President Masterson.
Just so for clarity, and it's not based on utilization, it's based on the availability of the beds. So if I'm hospital A and I've got 20 beds out of 100 total in the universe, I get 20% of the fund. Is that what I'm being told?
Senator McGinn? Senator Petty.
For the record, Mr. Chair, we can move on. I have time to figure it out.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're going to go back to the judicial. I think staff is ready to explain a few things there. Senator Clays.
Yeah, just restating the question, if you could give us a refresher on what was not funded in the partial funding.
Yep, this is Stephen Wu, Legislative Research. So the recommendation by the Senate committee was to delete 3.5 million SGF and 30 FTE positions. This is a partial recommendation of the agency's enhancement request of, I believe, 4.5 million and 40 FTE positions. So this leaves about 1 million SGF and about 10 positions in for it. My understanding is that those 10 positions are primarily tied to IT and cybersecurity.
What are the 30 positions that are not funded? What are they tied to?
A little bit of everything. There are you can primarily couch them under the umbrella of support positions. There are a large number of positions. They range from, a program manager for their language access program, to court reporters, to analysts for special projects, to specialists on grants. It really is just a handful of personnel in a number of programs.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think they presented us a list of all the different jobs, and then they prioritized them, is what they did, Senator, and then that's kind of how we come up with that number in the top 10, because that was kind of a negotiated thing, and it seemed like that everybody was okay with that. So
I'd like to recognize Dylan at this point, if you don't mind.
If you're done with judiciary questions?
Was there any more questions, Senator Clays?
Yeah, I think there's, once you're done with more.
Okay. All right. Senator Pittman.
I don't recall this one, sorry, I'm just blanking on it, but we're reducing the number of IT positions with this?
So the agency had requested 40 additional positions. They range in a number of different functions. The Senate committee's recommendation was to adjust that add to just 10 positions and 1 million SGF. The 10 positions added, among them are a lot of IT and cybersecurity personnel.
So we did add, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Correct.
We did add IT positions, given the recent security break there.
That's my understanding, yes.
I want to make sure that we did not cut their budget of what they requested in the IT department, right?
You're correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would make a motion then to add back in the funding and the positions under the judicial branch at this time.
Motion and a second by President Masterson. Questions on adding these back in? Questions, Senator Fagg.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. We vetted that very well. When we did that, we had a list of 40 with their priorities that went on with this. And I felt like that was a good compromise with what we did. So as we vote on this, we can't have Christmas every day, and there's a January that comes. So this was something that we felt like we could get by with. Thank you.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me, and I don't remember the exact number of how many open positions they had in their FTE?
Oh, I would have to hop back to my computer. I don't
It
know
seems that was part of the of our decision that were open positions that they could use to fill these other ones, if I remember right.
Yes, that's correct. A number of these positions, let me see, there are 11 of the 40 positions would repurpose existing vacant positions into these new ones. So it's not it's not a straightforward creation of 40 additional ones. A good chunk of that is repurposing.
Other discussion? Senator Pittman.
Just to be clear, this is all SGF, right?
Correct. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Committee, that takes care of the front. Oh, excuse me. Dylan.
I appreciate the consideration of the committee. I just wanted to bring your attention, that we did lose our judiciary analyst last week. So Mr. Wu has volunteered to take on the judicial branch. I think he did a pretty good job as far as I'm concerned, given the lack of time he's had to prepare for it. So I just want to recognize that, and I appreciate the consideration of the committee. The rest of the analysts have also taken on those additional responsibilities based upon the loss of that analyst. So I appreciate the consideration of the committee on that notice.
Thank you, Dylan. Committee, Senator Petty has a question on number 2, the State Library. Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So could the analyst give us an update on this? That appears to be that we partially funded.
Hello again, Jennifer Light, KLRD. In front of you, as part of the packet that we handed out, included 2 pieces of paper which had the per capita grants and aid for state libraries formula options. It looks something similar to this. This is not the latest version of it, but it was part of the packet that we did hand out. The way it stands currently is that in law, we only do per capita for local libraries. We do not do a base. So the base state grants and aid would be an additional dollar amount. The Senate Ways and Means, yes. I apologize, we hadn't handed it out. Okay, so based on this document, the green line in the top table is the amount that was funded for fiscal year 2024, which boils down to 28 cents per capita for local libraries and 14 cents for the regional, for a total per capita of 42 cents. What this committee had decided to do earlier that we were revisiting was increasing that from 28 cents to 30 cents. So that's the yellow line on this table, which would increase the total amount by $253,803. The committee also decided to do a base for the grants and aid for libraries of $1,000 per local library, which would be a total dollar amount of $486,000. The agency had asked for an increase of $1.2 million to get to a dollar total per capita, which would be 67 cents per library and 33 cents per library. And then they also asked for a base of 1.5 million, which would be a $3,000 per library. So what is currently being funded by this committee would be 30 cents per capita for local libraries and $1,000 base for the libraries.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Mr. Chair, thank you. As you can see by the table, I think it's important to realize that presently, and correct me if I'm incorrect, but presently they're not getting any funding per library. They're just getting the per capita.
Mr. Chair, yes, there is no base amount per library. So the table below would be a new portion and would also need a technical change to the language in the statute to include that. So the base is not there currently, just the table on top for the per capita.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. And so this is a good approach from the state library to help with funding. And if we look at, in many of our communities, the libraries have taxing authority, so having state funds that are kind of becoming could help them with reducing that amount of taxing authority that they use to fund their public libraries. I thought it was also telling in the presentation that this really, it's beneficial for all of our libraries, but particularly our small libraries in our smaller communities that have a very difficult time generating funding to support a library. And a library, as we know, is free and provides not only access for books and tapes and to all ages, but also not only educational, but also work training as well, opportunities. So I would like to make a motion that we look at the base state grant and aid for libraries and raise it to the 2,000 level. At 2,000 level would bring that total amount from 162,000 to 324,000. It would keep the raise from 28 to 30 cents, which is very minimal, but it would increase the per library dollar amount.
Mr. Chair?
Got a motion?
Yes.
Okay, and we have a second by Senator Pittman. Yes.
I just want to clarify, that would move it from the total dollar base of 486,000 to 972,000. The amount that was, the 324,000 would be the amount that goes to regional libraries, not. So I just want to clarify the dollar amounts.
Thank you. I'm looking at the wrong column. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Questions? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, in committee, we did vet this fairly well. We are increasing the number from 28 cents to 30 cents, which isn't very much. But when you go back down, some of these libraries, some of these communities only have like 30 students or 30 population. By putting the $1,000 in there, we felt like the $486,000 that we did increase was a good increase for the for this year and a new increase also. So my favor would be leave it where it is and check back with them and get a better feel after we do this for a year.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In committee also, I think we need to understand where we've been for the last 5-10 years with this and see where we're at today and how big of a jump we made in this kind of thing. So I felt like that we tried to, we did a good job in trying to come up with a good plan for them. So it took care of the small libraries. Local funding is a big deal, I can tell you that from being a former mayor, and they get a good number in that. So I think when you look at our percentage of what we increased here, I think that's a good step for this year, is my opinion.
President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just add, I support the work of the subcommittee and would not support the motion.
Any other discussion? Senator Pittman.
Well, this mainly helps out rural communities as far as I can tell, small. I don't have those in my community. If our senators who represent those rural communities don't want this, I don't really need to support this. I certainly support our libraries, and I support all the great things they do, and I support access to all kinds of books. But if there's no support for this from the rural community, I see no reason to support increasing this. Thank you.
Senator Petty.
And I was on this subcommittee, and as you might be able to tell, I didn't support the decision for the subcommittee. For one thing, the comments that were just made about, as you can see, when it comes per capita, we only get raised at 2 cents. That's what's been in place, and the 28 cents per capita, I don't have that number, the number of years, but it has not been increased for a long time. That was just gone up 2 cents. The Bay State grant in aid for libraries is a new concept of having that in place. And as was mentioned by Senator Alley, it is very, very difficult for small libraries to be able to provide the materials and the resources, even if they have only 30, which I don't think we have any town that has only 30 people living in it. But we do have small communities in Kansas, but they deserve to have libraries, and I think it behooves us to keep them in mind. So with that, I would move my amendment.
Any other questions or discussion? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We look very carefully at the small libraries because a lot of them, if I remember right, was getting checks for $300 or less. Now they're going to get $1,000. So there's going to be some out there that's going to get over 100% increase in what they're doing. So our focus was on the rural. When you get into the larger per capita, a lot of those have the ability for local taxing authority to keep up with what needs to go. So we was trying to help the rural area with this. It doesn't have the money to do that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? I think it failed. Motion failed. Any other discussion or questions on this? Seeing none. Committee, we're done with the front sheet and the regents. I would just direct your attention to the back page. And all these items are 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45 are funded. Is everyone okay with them being funded? Okay. At this time, then, I'm going to take provisos, if there are any. Senator Clays. Senator McGinn. Okay, we'll start with you.
Okay, thanks. On Envision, sorry about that. On Envision, it was a $600,000 for one-time funding. We put it in the wrong year. We put it in 24, and it just needs to be in 25. Okay.
A motion by Senator McGinn to move that, and second by Senator Clays. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. I think Senator Clays.
All right, I have a couple of cleanup items too, 3 total. One of them is when we did the pay increases for our Kansas Highway Patrol dispatchers were left out of that. So I would motion to add $366,122.68, all from the State Highway Fund, for the pay increase for dispatchers at the Kansas Highway Patrol.
Motion second by President Masterson. Questions? Senator Petty.
So my question is just, have the dispatchers been included in pay increase within that department in the past.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we typically have to make the motion to include them separately, so they're included in this. The Kansas Highway Patrol, if you'll recall, along with the KBI, because they're on career progression plans, they have to be motioned separately from the governor's overall pay increase that we approved.
Senator Petty?
I guess I should understand that answer, but I didn't quite. So the dispatchers are they're part of that budget, but their salaries are always handled separately?
Yeah, so, I'm sorry.
Senator Clays.
So there's a variety of little oddities throughout the system. So when you say things like, I'm moving to increase corrections officers' pay, you're not increasing parole officers' pay when you do that. And in this instance, there is a need for us to make whole the dispatchers. So we need to do that. Otherwise, they're not receiving a raise. So that would just make them equivalent in raise to what the Highway Patrol is receiving from a percentage standpoint.
Senator Petty.
And just to follow up on that, were in that budget, was there increase for the shortfall from last year? Would that have included them as well?
Senator Clays.
Evidently, they were separately added, so it's not relevant to this motion.
Senator Petty.
I just wanted to make sure that that was included within that budget. Thank you for that answer.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just another cleanup item on the DEI proviso. I'd motion to remove the addition of $35.7 million in SGF to the State Finance Council in 2026. The proviso affected 2026, and it does not have appropriation, so it doesn't need to be in there.
Motion second by President Masterson. Questions? Senator Petty.
So we're removing 2026 from that.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
2026.
Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the DEI provision, I am against it, but is there any way you'd consider putting some language in there to make sure that we don't affect federal funding with this in some fashion or form?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not open to edits at this time, besides taking this out of 2026.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a cleanup to make our runs accurate, we did move to remove LAVTR. I believe that only affected the 2 years of the budget when it was in front of us, so I would make a motion to remove LAVTR from the out years, and that would continue to suspend the transfers in FY 26 through 28.
Motion second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Well, put your hand up. Do you want to go first, or you want to refer? Senator Pittman.
Just got to look left a little bit sometimes. I don't think we should be modifying the out years in this budget that looks out 2 years. I think that we should maintain that for the next elected crew that comes in next year, and I don't think we should be taking this out of the fund anyhow. Thank you.
Senator Petty.
I know that this had been voted on, but I just have to make comments about the LAVTR. It just because we haven't funded in the past doesn't mean that here we have a strong economy, a local units of government have continued to request this overwhelmingly. It supports our communities, it supports our citizens. It's a great way of putting money back into our communities. I've heard many people talk about the possibility that this could help reduce property tax as well at the local level. So I think it's short-sighted for us to not look at the LAVTR and then to talk about wanting to go long-term of keeping this out. A decision was made some time ago to not fund it because of fiscal problems at the state level, and now we are fiscally strong, and yet we still don't want to put this money back, that when it was put in place was an agreement with our local units of government. So I think this is really short-sighted, and I think this money should be back in our budget.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Want to be recorded? Okay. Committee, I think that's our work for today. Senator Pittman.
You had mentioned on the last page that we should take a look at that, and I'm open to working this tomorrow, but I think we should review the OITS. We deleted 14 full-time positions for Security Operations Center. And the only reason we deleted it was because they were going to come back and talk about potential other solutions that would help them with their security profile, like automated and external.
Yeah, and we will meet tomorrow, so.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and staff has some additional information on the Otis piece, so we'll have them pass that out before we leave, and then be sure and bring it along tomorrow. With that, committee, we are